الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه أما بعد. We continue tonight, my brothers and sisters, with the words of advice from the noble companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the name of Ad-Dardaa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. We have previously mentioned that Ad-Dardaa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was a man of hikmah. He was a man of wisdom. And today we take the advice in which he said, as narrated from him, ما لي أرى علماءكم يذهبون وجهالكم لا يتعلمون تعلموا فإن العالم والمتعلم شريكان في الأجر. Ad-Dardaa radiyallahu anhu, in this piece of advice, he says, why is it that I see the scholars passing away and the ignorant not learning? He says, learn, for verily the scholar and the student share the reward. Why is it that I can see the scholars passing away and the ignorant are not learning? He then says, learn, for verily the scholar and the student share the reward. But this advice, my brothers and sisters, is one of the amazing pieces of advice from the great companion radiyallahu anhu, where he's emphasizing on 2 points. The first is the passing of the scholars. And the passing of the scholars is a calamity on the ummah. Because when the scholars pass away, there does not remain many left who can teach the ignorant and who can spread the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal. For we must find it to be very heavy on us when our scholars and people of knowledge pass away. And we have many great scholars in all different fields of Islam, the field of Tawheed, the field of Hadith, the field of Fiqh, the field of Tafsir, and so forth. And my brothers and sisters, our ummah today is in need of ulama, scholars who can nurture and raise people upon the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. And there is no doubt that during the lifetime of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, there were many scholars. And likewise during the era of the Tabi'een, who were the students of the Sahaba, there were many scholars. But today, the scholars can be counted as very few, my dear brothers. The ulama of Islam are not many. And you have billions of Muslims in the world. But who is left to teach? Who is left to guide so many Muslims? That shows the importance of the second part of advice, where he said, and we see the ignorant not learning. And that's the importance of seeking knowledge, my brothers. We must seek knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal's religion. So we must learn and take knowledge from the scholars, because there will come a time when the people will search for a scholar and they will not find a scholar. And this was the advice of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the hadith, An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن الله لا ينتزع هذا العلم انتزاعا من صدور العلماء ولكن بموت العلماء. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, verily Allah Azza wa Jal will not remove knowledge by removing it from the chests of the scholars. One of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that knowledge is lifted. And the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah does not remove the knowledge from people by removing it from the chests of the scholars, but rather by the death of the scholars, until no scholars remain. For when we hear of the passing of our ulama, the ulama of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, it should have a huge effect on us. The Prophet ﷺ then said, so the people will then take the ignorant as their leaders. And how much does this exist today? People taking as their leaders those that are not worthy of being leaders. They are taking the ignorant as their leaders, where they will be asked and they will give religious fatwa without knowledge. And how much does this happen? The ignorant acting as though they are knowledgeable, and they get asked questions in Islam, and An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says they give verdicts without knowledge. He said they will be astray and they will lead others astray. In this day and age, unfortunately, anyone that can open a YouTube page or a TikTok page or whatever it is can be considered a sheikh or a person of knowledge or a alim that people look up to and take their knowledge from. And that person probably doesn't even know the conditions of wudu or salah. We have to be very careful with our religion. And we should only seek our religion from the greatest and the best sources, which are the scholars of Islam. And the Salafus Salih, like Imam Malik rahimahullah and others, they said that knowledge is religion, so be careful who you take your religion from. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this hadith, he said these ignorant ones are astray and they lead others astray. It is like the blind leading the blind, and that's what we witness through social media and whatever else. For the Muslim must be wise. For when you have an illness or you need to seek medical advice, you strive to try to find the best of doctors. And if you need to see a specialist, you research who's the best specialist in this field. But subhanallah, when it comes to the matters of the akhirah, which is the most important of matters, we want to take our religion from any type of person that can speak and be funny and where's the standard of our deen? Why have we set such a low bar for our religion? But for worldly matters, we set bars very high. We must be very careful of this, my dear brothers. And this scares the ulama when the ignorant become seen as leaders and as people of knowledge. And those who have time and sound judgment must take time, must take from the scholars and be patient for the time spent doing so. When you learn your religion, you learn it from the people of knowledge. And there is no doubt that the people need students of knowledge in every village and city and neighborhood. This was one of the great pieces of advice from Ad-Dardaa radiyallahu anhu. His next piece of advice is where he said, إِنِّي لَآمُرُكُمْ بِالْأَمْرِ وَمَا أَفْعَلُهُ وَلَكِنْ لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يَأْجُرُنِي فِيهِ. In this advice, Ad-Dardaa radiyallahu anhu says, verily, I command you with an action and I do not do it. Verily, I command you to do an action and I myself do not do it, but perhaps Allah will reward me for it. but perhaps Allah will reward me for it. Now, if you look at this advice, my dear brothers, this is an amazing advice from the great companion where he is being completely honest, and he says, I will command you to do something which I myself do not do, but I hope that Allah will reward me for the advice that I give you. Now here, this is regarding, in general, the scholars and all those who give da'wah. A scholar, my dear brothers and sisters, may become overloaded in his obligations, and he gets asked plenty of questions. So he gives a lot of commands that he might not necessarily be doing all of them. And he might give advice of encouragement for you to do things that he might not necessarily be doing at that time. And the reason for that is because when the scholar is asked, he answers. When he is sought for advice, he advises. However, he hopes for the reward of guiding and directing the people to do it, while he is busy with something more beneficial for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what we benefit from this advice of Ad-Dardaa is that the scholar is not blamed if he commands with some things that he himself does not do. The only time he is blamed is if he prohibits something that he himself is not abandoning. Here he will be questioned. But as for actions of encouragement and so forth, no person can do every good righteous deed, but the scholar must still encourage and teach everything that he knows. And there are two benefits from this statement. The first is that the scholar does not say what many people assume, where he says, I do not perform this action, so I will not speak about it. Some people, and this is not only related to the scholars, my dear brothers, this goes for everyone that might be in the field of da'wah or giving da'wah in any type of way. We should not have the mentality and say, if I am not doing a particular action, I should not encourage it or advise it or command it. Because Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was asked this particular question where they asked him, should a person enjoin the good and forbid the evil if he himself falls into it? Look at this question. Should a person enjoin the good and forbid the evil if he himself falls into it? So Imam Malik rahimahullah said, yes, he should command and forbid, because if no one commanded or forbade except the one who does not commit the sins, then there would be only few who can command and forbid. And if we took that approach, then we will lose our religion. For we are encouraged to advise one another even if we ourselves are not perfect. And this is what the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal teaches. Because advice and commanding good and forbidding the evil, it keeps the ummah in a good place. For this is the approach of the scholars regarding this. Secondly, a person should not look at the scholar as one would look at others, because the scholar may command something that he does not do. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he left off the night prayer for a period of time. There was a period of time where Imam Ahmad was not praying the night prayers. And he was asked about this, and he said, we have traded the night prayer for studying with Abu Zur'a. The night prayer, he stopped it because he was busy studying with another scholar. So it does not mean everything the scholar preaches or calls to, he must be implementing at that time. Is this understood, my dear brothers? Abu Dardaa radiallahu anhu said it very clearly. I command you with things which I am not doing, but I hope Allah rewards me for it. Because He is still encouraging the good and He is forbidding the evil. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, Shaitan may come to a person and say, do not speak until you perform this act. Ibn al-Qayyim is actually saying this could be one of the doors of Shaitan to stop you from encouraging and advising others. Where he says, do not speak until you perform this act. He says, and for that reason, a lot of good will be missed due to this doubt. Something will be presented to someone and he will not do it. And so he will not command others to do it, and the good would not be spread. And that's how Shaitan wins that battle. For the Muslim must be wise. And yes, we must always try to implement what we say and call to. And what we encourage others, we must try to adopt ourselves first and foremost. But it does not mean that if you are not doing something that you should not encourage others to do it. And Allah knows best. Wallahu a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Mohamad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Are there any questions?